Hi everyone, I'm Nicole xstitch. Thank you so much for joining me today for my first ever Stitch with Me. I don't really know what I'm doing, so let's hope it goes well. I think I have everything set up properly, but today I'll be working on Elegant Lace by WorksByABC. And here is what the full pattern looks like. It's really gorgeous and I am almost done with it. I am currently at 89.06%. And so I really do just have this top corner area left right here that I am working on. And yeah, I think with that we can just get started. Hopefully you can see everything okay and the lighting's all right. I've already got a piece of floss attached over here. I've got my pattern keeper set up on my tablet, kind of off to the side. Got some scissors, very matchy-matchy. And I have my floss that I've just been keeping on this ring. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. I am working up here in this top area on a bunch of basically just fill in right now. So this project is pretty neat because it uses two different types of floss, one of which is like pretty uncommon. I haven't seen it used too much. It's called DMC floche. And the floche is all of the full crosses that you see here. It's a single strand of DMC floche. And then all of the half stitch that I am like filling in right now, that is just a single strand of the DMC stranded cotton, like 6-stranded cotton, the normal DMC that we all use for pretty much everything. So the floche, you won't find it in like a normal craft store. I've never seen it in like my Michaels or anything like that. But I did find it at my local needle workshop, and I'm sure that you can get it from the DMC website as well. Probably from some people on Etsy, something like that. It comes in a whole hank, so it is a lot of floss. It's more than you need for this project even. I don't know, maybe if you were doing it on a bigger, like a different count, you might use more of it. So I think the effect works the best on this, which, so I'm doing 36 count. I believe it's a Zweigart Sahara. It's this really gorgeous mustardy yellow color. And I think this project looks most effective on what is effectively 18 count, because I'm doing it over 2. Although I would say that I think it looks better probably on like an even weaver linen over 2 than it would on an Aida, just because it allows the stitching to stand out in the background. The fabric can kind of blend in more, if you know what I mean. I've always found that like stitching over 2 on something, it allows the stitches to stand out from the fabric because the squares themselves in the fabric aren't as obvious as they would be on like an Aida. I think it makes it look more like dainty and more detailed and all of that. So I would say if you want to stitch elegant lace and you're going to use the floche, I would recommend doing it on 36 count because I think the coverage is really good. The kind of like difference between the full crosses and the half stitch is really obvious. I'm not sure that the effect would be the same if you changed the count of fabric by very much. And it's a really nice stitch. Like the floche stitches really nicely on this count with just a single strand. Also, stitching with a single strand but getting those like really puffy stitches is really the advantage of using floche here, because using like 2 strands of DMC I think would be similar, but I don't think that the contrast between the 2 types of stitches would be as obvious if you just used 2 strands of DMC. But then again, I haven't really like looked into other people doing this project too much, so maybe somebody out there is doing it with 2 strands of DMC, and they can speak to how they think the effect holds up. I've just really enjoyed using the floche, and I can show you kind of what that looks like. I cut the hank up into long strands, so yeah, let's see. So this is the floche, and this is just 6-stranded DMC. So you can see, like, here's 1 strand of the normal DMC stranded cotton, and here's 1 strand of the floche. So definitely a different thickness, and the floche is like made up of multiple strands, but they're not separable like 6-stranded cotton. So yeah, it's a nice difference. It's really soft and nice to work with, and I've enjoyed it. So it's always fun to have a project that lets you use a unique floss that you maybe haven't used before. So I was setting up my camera for this, and like I said, I've never done a stitch with me before. So I really didn't know how close to put my camera. Yeah, so let me know if you like to see a closer view than what I have. I don't know how close up people like to see. Like, I don't know, can you maybe not see what I'm doing well enough? I'm not sure. But anyway, I hope everybody is having a nice weekend so far. It is Saturday morning for me. I got to sleep in, which was very nice, and got up and made some breakfast, and figured I would sit down for a little bit and do some stitching and test out what a stitch with me is like. I will say the angle is a little awkward. Like one of my arms is kind of up really high. I don't think I could stitch like this for too terribly long. And you can probably see in the picture of my face, like I'm basically forehead to phone. My phone is on I just shook my phone by touching it. So my phone is on a little like gooseneck phone stand, and I have some floating shelves above my desk, so I attached it up there. So at least if I bump the table, it won't shake the camera. It's only if I bump it with my head or hand or something like that. So probably most of the shaking you're seeing is just my stitching moving. So I have my stitching in a Q-snap right now. This is pretty much my standard setup for bigger projects. It's a Q-snap on my K's Creation Z-frame lap stand, which works great if you're working at a desk. It also works great if you're working like on a couch or on a bed. So I use it basically anytime I have something in a Q-snap. It is in my Z-frame. That way I can stitch two-handed, which I'm partial to. You can also attach like a hoop into the Z-frame, that works fine as well. I don't do it as frequently unless I'm working on like a really big hoop, but with most hoops, you know, 6-7 inches and smaller, I'm usually just holding it and stitching one-handed, especially because most of the time those are the projects that I'm taking on my bus commute with me, so they need to fit in my backpack. And this is, I'm not sure that any frame really exists that is particularly travel friendly in terms of like using it in a moving vehicle. Just marking off what I've done. I have some full crosses that need to go in up here, so I just want to make sure that I'm not going too far up and missing those stitches. Basically, my strategy for this project has been like stitch some of the full crosses until I have like a good chunk of area that I can fill in with the half stitches, then do that. And then I'm just deciding every time I finish a strand of one floss or the other if I can keep going with that, or if I need to switch back and do the other type of stitch to get some more area to fill in. The fill-in is really nice though. It goes super fast because it's only half stitch, so I can feel like I make a lot of progress if I'm doing a lot of the fill-in. Kind of gives you a big head though to be like, oh yeah, I stitched like 400 stitches in an hour and a half. I don't know how fast y'all stitch, but I think I'm somewhere, depending on the complexity of the pattern and the number of color changes. Like, if I'm working on a heaven and earth design type thing where there's a lot of confetti, or just a small pattern where there's a lot of color changes, I'm probably looking at like 100 stitches or less per hour if it's full cross. But if I'm doing like half stitch of a solid color, then that goes up a lot. I actually don't know how many stitches I would complete in an hour of like half stitch in one color. Probably it would be at least double, probably 200 to 300 is my guess. If anybody else knows your like general stitching speed, I'd be very curious to know. Obviously it also matters if I'm stitching one-handed or two-handed, but let's just say two-handed. Let me know what you think your average stitching speed is. Kind of fun to compare. I feel like sometimes I'm not sure if other people that I watch on flosstube just have more like time to cross stitch, or if they like just stitch way faster than I do. So I was also wondering, basically I feel like stitch with me's are kind of funny to do like this because like I want to ask y'all questions. Oops, just adjusted my frame unintentionally. I want to ask you guys questions, or like, you know, kind of have a conversation, but there's nobody here with me to talk to. Obviously you can like leave comments, which is cool, but I feel it's kind of funny to be like, hey, how are you guys doing? What are you up to this weekend? When there's nobody to talk to in real time. So I'm kind of also curious, for those of you who do like to watch Stitch with Me's, do you prefer ones where people are talking? And if so, do you like when they just like, you know, talk about their life, talk about their stitching? What are you looking for when you watch a Stitch with Me? And or do you prefer like a live stitch with me where somebody's like live streaming it and you can join in real time? And that way you can kind of have a little bit more of a conversation. My brain is not functioning. I can't figure out if I'm stitching this part right or wrong. Okay. I think it is correct. Uh-oh. Maybe it's not. Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I get for talking and stitching. Frogging's all part of the game, right? Let's see, where did I come from? Did I come from down here? So would you rather listen to somebody talk throughout the stitch with me? If so, what do you like to hear about? I can just give you random life updates. Like, I don't know. I say that and then I don't actually know what I would share. Or do you prefer like just no talking, just like background music and video of stitching? Or do you prefer a live stream where you can like actually be, you know, talking to people in the chat and all of that? I'm not really sure how people do live stitch with me's. Like, I know a lot of people do them, but I think I would maybe have a really hard time focusing on both, like talking to people in the chat and stitching at the same time. But I don't know, a lot of people do it, so it must be possible. Maybe you just have to get used to it. I mean, normally when I'm stitching, I'm like watching flosstube, or I'm watching TV, or I'm listening to an audiobook. So I don't have to like, you know, think about it. Think about what I'm gonna say, really. I'm not talking a ton. It seems like something that would be good if you had like a piece where you had to do a lot of fill-in, so you at least didn't have to like think about the stitching part. You just kind of do it mindlessly. That way you could focus on the actual conversations a little bit more. So Elegant Lace is one of my WIPGO calls for this month, and it was called for a finish, which I think I'm well on my way to doing. When I picked it back up, it was at around 75%, and I'm currently at almost 90%, so I made good progress already, and I think I can probably finish this in another week or so. I'm really happy that this finally got called. I can't remember if I had it at 75% at the beginning of this year or only 50 and it was already called once. But either way, it feels like it's been forever since I worked on it last. So it's nice to have it back out, and it's gonna be so pretty when it's finished. I really like this pattern. It reminds me of my grandma's crocheting. She like crochets a lot of lace, like really fine, you know, the crocheting that you do with like the really fine almost more like thread than yarn. You make like really pretty tablecloths and all that kind of stuff. She has it all around her house. It kind of reminds me of that. Of course, it's a completely different technique, but I think the kind of style matches. Something like that. The other thing that reminds me of that type of fiber art, I guess, that type of crocheting is hardanger, which I had never done before until last weekend, and I suddenly just got this, like, I don't know, feeling that I desperately needed to try it, like, right then. I have no idea why. I think I had been working on this, and I was thinking back to when I tried to do some finishing for my Save the Bees pattern. So I stitched those up and then realized that they don't really fit in frames very well. They're not like normal frame dimensions. So I didn't have like a good way to display them. So I just used, oh, what's it called? I used, it's like an edging, it's an edge technique for hardanger. Of course, I can't remember it now. But anyway, it's also how you can make like a fringe edge on fabric. I was thinking about that. It was a really enjoyable process, even though it's like very kind of monotonous. I mean, I guess all stitching is a little bit monotonous. That's kind of why we like to do it, right? It's something that you focus on, but it doesn't take like a ton of brain power. It keeps your hands busy. Anyway, I decided to just try some hardanger and was like reading some people's blogs with little like lessons on how to do it, and I just grabbed some fabric and some basically like crocheting thread that I had gotten, I don't know if it was from my grandma when she tried to teach me, if I bought it after, and I just tried my hand at it. Honestly, do you guys want to see it? Maybe I should just show you. I don't want to flip my frame over and finish my threads right now on the back, so I'm just gonna pull them out of the way and I'll finish them after this. Just pull them through some stitches on the back, but let me grab my stitching. Okay, so didn't realize that was in there. Okay, so this is what I mean by like crocheting thread. They like come in these balls, and they're thicker than like sewing thread or embroidery floss, really. Kind of somewhere. So this is some DMC pearl cotton, number 5. So they're like maybe 5 or 8 weight. And so I just used this on some white 28 count that I had, and I found a little hardanger pattern, and this is what I ended up with. Yeah, put it right there. So, I mean, it's not beautiful, partially because I was just practicing and I wasn't necessarily planning on doing this buttonhole edge, so I didn't have enough fabric on that side to actually finish it. That's fine. And then also when I was trimming the extra fabric off, I wasn't being that careful, and I trimmed the buttonhole stitches in a couple spots, so it's a little bit messy. But it was a fun thing to try. I kind of enjoyed it. I think having a softer fabric to work with. Like this was 28 count Charles Craft, like Monaco even weave, or is it Monaco? I don't even know. Even weave from Michaels, and it's a very like stiff fabric right out of the box. And it makes it really hard to do these parts where you remove the threads. So I think having like a softer fabric like a Zweigart or a Lugana would be nice, easier to work on. And then also like I didn't really have the right thread to do this for this size of fabric. It was recommended, I think, to do like a 8 weight and 12 weight thread, and I just had this one that's like maybe kind of 8 or 5 weight, so it's a little thick for some of the details in here, I think, which also maybe made it more difficult. But this is something that I think would be really fun to do in a like bigger pattern. I think it turns out really pretty. It's really unique. It's sometimes also referred to as white work, I think, because it's like traditionally it's done with white floss on white fabric. So I really like that look. I think if it was done in a colored thread or with white thread on a colored fabric, like on, you know, 2 non-matching colors, I think it wouldn't look as pretty. I think the effect and the laciness of it looks like this because it is white thread on white fabric. This is like what I usually think of doing. These all kind of remind me of the same thing. So this I just grabbed out of my box. This is some like crocheted lace that I did a while ago when I was like learning how to crochet lace, like really fine, with this really fine thread stuff. This is like literally what I use for this. And this is kind of what my grandma does. I mean, obviously she doesn't just make like a strip of lace, it's like an entire like tablecloth or something really intricate like that. But all 3 of these things kind of remind me of the same style. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of lacy, it's like white thread, it's very delicate, and I really like the look of all of them. This like crochet lace is not necessarily something I enjoy doing very much. Like, I don't know, I made like a strip of it and that's basically the only time I've ever done it. But the hardanger I really liked, and of course cross stitching is fun, so this piece I've enjoyed a lot. So anyway, that's a really big sidetrack, but anyway, yeah. I think I'm going to go back down to this area and work with the floche again. I normally keep all my thread on bobbins, but it is kind of, I do see the appeal of having them like pre-cut on floss drops. But it's not something that I think I'm ready to really convert to. Like I don't want to have my entire DMC collection on floss drops. The storage is not as nice, the transportability is not as nice in my opinion. So I don't think it's for me, but it is very convenient to be able to just pull out a single strand really easily. So again, I don't want to flip this over because I have it positioned well, so I'm just going to leave a kind of extra long tail on the back, and I will weave that in at a later point in time. Or maybe I'll accidentally stitch over it, who knows. I also, maybe this is a bad habit, but I have a habit of, I realize now my hand is like covering everything up. I have a bad habit of cutting my threads really long, which maybe you can tell. But I really, really hate starting and finishing threads, so I just kind of go with it. How do you all feel about stitching borders? Because I have mixed feelings. Obviously they look gorgeous. They can be kind of boring, but they can also be kind of nice if you can memorize the pattern. This one I'm not so good at memorizing the pattern of. But I know some people consider themselves like, oh, I love stitching borders. Okay, so you probably just got a little bit of a random jump in progress, but my boyfriend just got home from a drive and we were talking, so I just kept stitching, but we'll probably cut that part out. But yeah, if you're a border, if you like border stitching, what is it that appeals to you about it? And do you like complex borders? Do you like really simple borders? I think maybe besides the monotony of it, like people who don't like borders maybe don't like them because it feels like the progress on them is really slow. Like you're like, oh, it's just the edge. Like even if it's just like one single line of stitches along the edge, it doesn't look like much, but it's like shocking how long that would take you to stitch sometimes. At least that's how I feel. So yeah, I'm curious what other people's thoughts are. Like, do you prefer, maybe not even just with like borders, but do you prefer like complex stitching where there's like lots of colors or lots of confetti? Do you like color blocking? Does it just depend on your mood? For me, it definitely depends on my mood. And like what else I'm trying to do at the same time. Like if I'm just like watching a show I've already watched before. Ooh, sorry about that. Or if I'm like listening to an audiobook where I don't have to look at anything else, then I'm happy to do more complex stitching. But if I'm in some situation where it might be hard to multitask, then color blocking is nice. But yeah, anyway. Thanks for joining me for my first stitch along. I think I'm gonna wrap up with the end of this shape. I'm sure I'll be working on this a lot more today and throughout the rest of the weekend and next week. And probably in my next flosstube video, you'll see it as a finish. So yeah, I thought it would be kind of fun to show a little bit more progress before I just show you the finished piece. Alrighty, so let's stop there. In this time, let's see how many stitches we got. So I've been filming for just under 50 minutes and completed 165 stitches, a lot of which were these half stitches, so take that as you will. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to chatting with you all in the comments. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye!